The House will be in order. The chair lays before the House a communication from the Speaker. Pursuant to the order.
The Speaker's Rooms, Washington, D.C., June 13th, 2024. I hereby appoint the Honorable Jefferson Van Drew to act as Speaker Pro Tempore on this day. Signed, Mike Johnson, Speaker of the House of Representatives.
Pursuant to the order of the House on January 9th, 2024, the Chair will now recognize members from lists submitted by the majority and minority leaders for a morning hour debate. The Chair will alternate recognition between the parties with time equally allocated between the two parties. And each member other than the majority and minority leaders and the minority whip limited to 5 minutes, but in no event shall debate continue beyond 11:50 a.m. The Chair recognizes the gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Thompson, for 5 minutes.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to recognize the 80th anniversary of the Allied D-Day invasion of France. Last week, we recognized this solemn anniversary and honored the bravery of our armed forces who served in that operation. On June 6th, 80 years ago, thousands of America's bravest soldiers fought to protect the freedoms, liberties, and rights of those back home. Sadly, the United States lost more than 6,000 soldiers that day. Ultimately, we would lose thousands of brave servicemen members in the coming weeks and months, liberating the rest of Western Europe from German control. Marking a crucial turning point in World War II, the Allied forces joined together to storm the beaches of Normandy. These patriots conquered their fears of what lie ahead in battle, showcasing sheer bravery while facing the dangerous unknown. In an operation that would quickly turn the tide of the war and rally men across nations, American soldiers made sacrifices, leaving permanent marks on the war-torn terrain, on their families, and on our hearts. Mr. Speaker, in 2018, I had the privilege of attending the wreath-laying ceremony at Normandy American Cemetery in France. I'm forever humbled and grateful for the opportunity to travel to those beaches our brave men stormed so many years ago. Looking out and seeing the white crosses, brothers buried next to brothers, fathers buried next to sons, is a reminder that our freedom isn't free. The memorial serves as a constant reminder that the United States will fight and die to protect the freedoms of not just American citizens, but for those around the globe. And we are eternally grateful for this devotion to duty and devotion to country. I want to recognize members of the Pennsylvania 15th Congressional District who stormed the beaches of Normandy. Our community has a long history of strong military service across many years of service, and today I name just a few. From Bradford, McKean County, Elmer DeLucia, who served in the 81st Chemical Mortar Battalion. He landed on Omaha Beach on D-Day, June 6, 1944, and was involved in 4 more battles: Northern France, the Battle of the Bulge, the Rhineland, and Central Europe. Mr. DeLucia passed away at the age of 99 in 2022. He spent the years after returning home speaking often about his service, wanting to share his firsthand knowledge, especially with school children. Mr. Speaker, I'd also like to remember the members of our community who gave their lives during the D-Day battle. There were 347 Pennsylvanians who were killed in action. They gave their lives defending our freedoms. Of those men, 31 grew up across the 15th Congressional District. May we always remember their sacrifices. Mr. Speaker, let us take a moment to remember and honor those who sacrificed so much for so many, and celebrate the heroism of the service members nationwide. For the good of the many, so gave the few. It is these few we acknowledge today, and let us honor their heroism. Let us always speak with pride of D-Day, of our troops, and of our victory. God bless America. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Chair now recognizes the gentlewoman from Pennsylvania, Ms. Houlihan, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to address the House and to revise and extend my remarks. First, I'd like to thank the Chair Rogers and Mr. Smith and Rep. Bacon for the opportunity to work on this really important piece of legislation, which is the National Defense Authorization Act. Unlike any other piece of legislation that we have passed in Congress, we pass this bill every single year for over 6 decades. It's a testament to our enduring commitment to our brave men and women in uniform, and it is proof that, that Republicans and Democrats can indeed continue to find common ground and provide for our collective defense. Since I arrived in 2019 in Congress, I've had the privilege of serving on the Armed Services Committee, which oversees this defense bill, and it's truly one of the highlights of my career to serve on such a bipartisan committee. This idea of bipartisanship, putting country before party, is not new to me. It's indeed how I was raised. As the daughter and granddaughter of naval aviators, it's not an exaggeration to say that my very earliest memories are on a military base. I was born at Pax River Naval Air Station, just a few hours from here. So when it was my turn to fulfill our commitment to our nation, I served in the Air Force, but that, of course, did not come without challenges. So now, as a member of the Armed Services Committee, I have shared not only my own challenges and those of my family who have been in uniform, but also those of my mother and my grandmother and countless other Pennsylvanians and Americans that I've been able to talk to along the way. Sharing these stories helps make our military the greatest on earth and make it even stronger. For nearly a year, I've now had the privilege of serving as ranking member on our Military Quality of Life panel, alongside my very dear friend, Republican colleague Rep. Don Bacon from Nebraska. From inadequate pay to substandard housing conditions to long wait times for essential services, it's very clear that we have enormous work to do to ensure that our military families have the support and resources that they need to thrive. So that's why we proposed 31 different recommendations, and I will highlight just a few of them. First and foremost, pay. We want pay that is competitive with our civilian economy, including a significant additional pay raise for junior enlisted E1 through E4. Second, housing. Our recommendation is to reverse the 5% reduction in BAH that was passed nearly a decade ago. BAH would now cover 100% of the calculated rate for military housing. In a similar vein, third, we recommended funding facility budget requests at 100% of the maintenance and modernization requirements so that we are able to fully fund them. And finally, and next, child care. The bill that we passed out of committee would cover child care expenses for those who worked in our Child Care Development Center for their first child at a minimum. So this would get more staff on the books, more open and available child care slots, and reduce wait times. And finally, on health care. Service members won't need referrals any longer for physical therapy, for nutrition, for women's health, for audiology, for optometry, and podiatry specialties. And spousal employment. We will be supporting military spouses by expanding child care access for them from 90 to 100 days while they are able to look for a job, and permanently expanding our partnership with the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. We have the greatest military in the world because of the people that wear the uniform and the families that support them. So we must take care of them. And at the very least, we owe our military community a bill that is free from political drama and theater. Unfortunately, we here on the floor are now seeing some very upsetting amendments being offered to a very bipartisan bill and potentially adding to this bill with many poison pills that will make it difficult for even me to vote for the final passage of the bill, even though there's so much goodness in it. Just a few ideas of what we will be voting on today. Banning pride flags in workplaces and public areas in the Department of Defense. This one particularly absurd. Banning content related to certain animals that change their sex, like clownfish, and a range of education materials. Thirdly, prohibiting the Secretary of Defense from paying or reimbursing expenses related to reproductive care, such as abortion services. Fourth, eliminating any DEI or diversity, equity, and inclusion within the military and laying off everyone who's in those offices. And finally, prohibiting all assistance to Ukraine, which of course would be a gift to Russia, China, Iran, and all of our adversaries. These are just some of the very unserious efforts that we are seeing here on the floor. Enormously frustrating to see these being added to this bill, which was such a bipartisan bill, voted out of committee 57-1. Regardless of which amendments do pass, these are attacks against women, against the LGBTQ community, against diversity initiatives, and more, and they will have a chilling effect on military recruitment and retention at a time when we are facing historic challenges to fill our all-volunteer ranks. We, the Congress, need to knock this off. I proudly served in uniform, as did generations of my family before me, and I will do everything in my power to send a truly bipartisan bill to the President for signature. I look very much forward to continuing to work with my colleagues in the House and Senate to do just that. Thank you, and I yield back.
The chair recognizes the gentleman from California, Mr. Correa, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, today I rise to honor Martin Escalante Ortiz on his 100th birthday. Martin is part of America's greatest generation. Born in 1924, Mr. Ortiz served in our nation's United States Army, World War II. And for his service, he received several medals for his service, including the Purple Heart and Bronze Star. And after the war, Martin returned home and cared for his younger siblings before he married his wife, Maria, in 1955. And together they raised 10 children, built a legacy that includes 21 grandchildren and 18 great-grandchildren. The late 1950s, Martin moved to Orange County and joined our community. Martin, happy birthday, and thank you for your service to our country and to our community. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to honor the life and legacy of Espirillon Castillo, known in our community as Speed. Speed was an Air Force veteran, cherished father, dedicated educator, and esteemed community leader. How did he get the nickname Speed? He ran the 400-meter in Flagstaff, Arizona in 50 seconds and covered 800 meters in 2 minutes. Speed dedicated over 30 years of his life to Anaheim Union High School District as a teacher, counselor, truant officer, principal, and director of Federal Project. He also spent almost 50 years as a high school sports referee. Speed often helped those in need, including students that couldn't afford the graduation expenses. He leaves behind a lasting legacy and is survived by his son Michael, daughters Michelle and Lisa, and 3 grandchildren. Speed, thank you for your service. We love you, and we will never forget you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to recognize the career of Anaheim Elementary School District Superintendent, Dr. Chris Downing. Dr. Downing dedicated the last 6 years of his career to leading the largest elementary school district in California, where he oversaw tremendous progress in science, arts, math, and music education. And notably, Dr. Downing expanded learning opportunities and created after-school programs for our children. And he made sure that our community was a leader in dual language programs like Spanish, Korean, and Mandarin for all of our students. During Dr. Downing's tenure, our elementary school district won many statewide recognitions, including the California Department of Education's Pivotal Practice Award for effectiveness during the pandemic. Dr. Downing's 35 years as an educator has demonstrated his commitment to education of our children. Doc, I wish you happy retirement, congratulations, and thank you. Mr. Speaker, thank you, and I yield.
Gentleman yields back. The chair now recognizes the gentlewoman from Michigan. Oh, hold on a second. Okay. The chair recognizes the gentleman from California, Mr. Cardenas, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to honor and remember the life of a remarkable and loving woman, Dominga Reyes Bustamante, who recently passed away on May 20th, 2024, at the age of 89. Dominga Reyes Bustamante led a life full of service and charity that touched so many lives and today is worthy of praise. Her story initiated in Dinuba, California, the place her family decided to migrate to and work in the Central Valley's agricultural fields. She was a proud alum of the local Dinuba schools. It was at Dinuba High School where she met her husband, Cruz Bustamante Jr. Their love and desire to start their family took them to San Joaquin, California, the place that saw Dominga blossom into a local social and cultural icon. Dominga was a public servant without having any official title. She saw the need in her community and was moved to action. She was a member of the Volunteers in Service to America, VISTA, program where she helped low-income families obtain their Social Security benefits. As a CSO organizer, she spent her days driving her community's elderly to nearby Fresno for their appointments, as well as interacted with local city and county officials and boards to ensure that the citizens of San Joaquin and the surrounding communities were given the fair and equitable rights they deserved. Dominga formed the San Joaquin Teen Club, where she served as an advisor and teen anxiety first responder. She was a law enforcement interdiction advocate, a bilingual instructional aide, a certificated healthcare provider, and social and political activist. A devout Catholic, Dominga wanted to share her faith with others, so she taught catechism for many years in San Joaquin and in Fresno. Dominga's kind spirit extended to newcomers as she served as the unofficial welcome host to her new Hindu and Sikh families moving into her community. Throughout her public service and acts of goodwill, she never demanded anything in return, but her community took notice of her works and honored her while she was with us. In 2001, Fresno State University celebrated Dominga and her husband Cruz during their 25th annual Latino commencement as they paid tribute to all parents who guide and encourage their children to succeed. In 2002, Dominga received a Lifetime Achievement Award from the California Latina Leaders in Action in recognition of her long-term involvement in community empowerment and advocacy. The Diocese of Fresno recognized her for more than 30 years of service as a faithful minister of God's Word and presented her with the Bishop's Catechist Appreciation Certificate. All these accomplishments and accolades served as a perfect example for her 6 children as they too were inspired to a life of service. Among them was Cruz Miguel Bustamante, who became the first Latino to serve as Speaker of the California State Assembly and California's 45th Lieutenant Governor. In her latter years, Dominga stayed active and involved in the community by volunteering for the Fresno Food Bank and continuing as a catechism teacher for members of her congregation. She took to caring for and maintaining her cactus garden, reading the latest Karen Kingsbury novel, and giving her time to friends and family. Her home served as the family gathering spot for holidays, birthdays, and tamale-making parties. She also became an accomplished seamstress and quilter and made sure each grandchild had their own special handmade blanket. Although she is no longer with us, her kindness, love, faith, wisdom, and legacy will live on with the entire Bustamante family as she is survived by her 6 children, Cruz, Belinda, Dorothy, Ron, Andrew, and Naomi, her 13 grandchildren, and her 24 great-grandchildren. With all my admiration, descansa en paz. Rest in peace, Señora Dominga. This is a perfect example of a true American who gave of herself in her entire life and was selfless, not only for her community and her country, and once again, she will live on forever in the hearts of many of us that she touched. With that, Mr. Speaker, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The chair will receive a message.
Speaker, messages from the President of the United States.
Mr. Speaker,
Madam Secretary.
I am directed by the President of the United States to deliver to the House of Representatives messages in writing.
Very good. The chair now recognizes the gentlewoman from Michigan, Ms. Slotkin, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The annual National Defense Authorization Act is the Pentagon's budget. It's perhaps one of the most important tasks we fulfill here in Congress, protecting our national security, taking care of service members, their families, their housing. It's been one of the few places where we have bipartisan agreement, despite what you see on TV. And this year, the House Armed Services Committee again did their job and on a bipartisan basis passed the Defense Authorization Act out of committee 57-1. And that includes a bunch of investments for our quality of life of our military members and our military families. So the bill was good to go when it left committee. Unfortunately, once it left committee, it's transformed into a document that my colleagues have turned into a culture war document. Most disappointing, again, is despite what my colleagues say, that they were good with overturning Roe v. Wade, but then they'll leave it to the states to decide what to do. Beyond that, we are once again watching them try and strip away a basic right to provide reproductive health care to our women in uniform. It's dividing us at a time where we should be coming together on national security challenges, and it says specifically that uniformed women do not have the right to leave the state, get some time off to leave the state to get an abortion if they need it. So if you're forced to be based in Texas and you get pregnant and you don't want to be pregnant, they are trying to repeal that woman's right to take time off and travel to another state to get an abortion. They also are trying to repeal the right for a servicewoman to take time off to help her daughter get an abortion in another state, not even a woman in uniform. So I'm deeply disappointed in, again, my colleagues' constant attempts to repeal a woman's right to choose. Again, in public, they may say, well, we were good with Roe. We're thrilled that Roe was overturned, but now we're leaving it alone. In this Congress alone, in the past year and a half, we have voted 15 times to strip a woman of a right to choose in some form or fashion. Sometimes it's the right to travel. Sometimes it's the right to medication. Sometimes it's the right to understanding if a healthcare center is actually able to perform an abortion or not. It's misinformation. It's disinformation. So I'm deeply disappointed that we're again in this place where my colleagues won't stop attacking a woman's right to choose, and now a woman in uniform, someone who's putting her life on the line to serve her country. We have seen a ton of other divisive amendments come into the NDAA, something that, again, should never be a place where we do culture wars. I'm also very disappointed in the refusal of a very bipartisan amendment to be brought to the floor, preserving our National Guard tactical air capability that underwrites our national defense. We asked on a bipartisan basis that the Pentagon show us their plan to recapitalize their aircraft as they bring down the number of planes that they have in the U.S. Air Force. We said, what's your plan? If you're worried about conflicts with China, if you're worried about issues abroad, for every 2 planes we are retiring, we are creating and initiating only 1 new plane to replace that. So places like Selfridge Air Force Base, which are home to important fighter aircraft, don't know what the plan is after the A-10s depart. So we had a bipartisan agreement that just would say, hey, Pentagon, tell us what your plan is. We'd like to know what fighters are coming behind that. And unfortunately, it was ruled out of order when we weren't able to talk about it. Despite having 30 bipartisan co-sponsors, a tremendous show of support from the Air National Guard, this will not receive a vote on the floor. So as a CIA officer and Pentagon official and someone who has spent my entire life looking at national security issues, not through a political lens, but through a national security lens exclusively, it is hard to watch my colleagues across the aisle turn the Pentagon budget into a culture war buffet, particularly on the issue of choice, as we have the Supreme Court in real time making decisions about a woman's right to choose. Do not believe my colleagues when they say that they now are done pursuing a woman's right to choose. Look at what they do, not what they say. And with that, I yield back.
Generally yields back. The chair now recognizes the gentlewoman from Michigan, Ms. Tlaib, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Juneteenth is a day of joy, a celebration of freedom, and a reminder of the work that lies before us as we continue to fight for true equity and justice for our Black neighbors. On Juneteenth and every day in our community, we honor the trauma and acknowledge the pain and hurt of our Black Americans who fought tirelessly for their freedom, and we still aren't done. We celebrate this Independence Day with activists and organizers and community leaders who uplift Black history and carry on the enduring struggle for justice for all. Our country right now, that our own Black neighbors literally built, including this very building I'm standing in, the Capitol, Yet, systemic racism and discrimination continue to plague our institutions and our communities. We see it in disparities in healthcare, education, housing, access to basic necessities, racism in our legal system, and economic opportunities, and so much more. By providing reparations, the debt owed to our Black neighbors upon emancipation for centuries of enslavement and oppression, we can begin, Mr. Speaker, to address the injustices. I know the 12th Congressional District knows that reparations are a debt that our nation owes, a true acknowledgement of the pain and harm inflicted on generations of our Black families. Juneteenth is a reminder of how far we've come, but also how far we still need to go. This Juneteenth, please join me in honoring our Black neighbors as we commit to fighting for reparations, voting rights, ending police brutality, investing in Black maternal health, HBCUs, and so much more. Mr. Speaker, the Supreme Court is not facing an ethics crisis, it's a corruption crisis. But it seems like that every single day there's new headlines about more corruption coming out of our U.S. Supreme Court. I know we need urgent action to hold these unhinged, corrupt extremists accountable. It is extremely disturbing that the United States Supreme Court, the highest court of our land, is the only court that does not have enforceable code of conduct. Justice Thomas, which my residents call corruption clearance, has received over $4 million in 193 gifts, including multiple vacations, flights on private jets, helicopter rides, Mr. Speaker, and yacht trips from Republican billionaire mega donors like Harlan Crow, who actually have cases before the court. And we are supposed to expect this court to hold itself accountable? Give me a break. One of these luxury trips actually cost $500,000. And it's not just corrupt clearance, it's Justice Alito, who has also been hit with numerous scandals recently, including accepting luxury trips and flying insurrectionists Stop the Steal flags outside of his home after the attack on our U.S. Capitol. And yet, here we go, the American people are supposed to trust him to decide the cases around January 6th. And these unelected justices serving lifetime appointments, Mr. Speaker, continue, and again, to strip us of our rights, shred our voting rights, gut our environmental protections, our right to breathe clean air and drink clean water, and sell our democracy to the highest bidder. It's time to expand the Supreme Court. It's time for reforms. I know our residents in the 12th Congressional District are demanding that I move with urgency on this issue. We need to enact term limits to Supreme Court justices, enforce binding code of conduct, real reforms, and expedite impeachment proceedings. These reforms are long overdue. I know Justice Thomas should have never been confirmed in the first place. We should have listened to Anita Hill. But let me be clear, Thomas and Alito need to be impeached and removed from the bench now. Our country deserves a Supreme Court that's acting in the best interest of the American people, not a court that is accepting bribes and doing the bidding of right-wing extremists. Mr. Speaker, I want to recognize the Caribbean American Heritage Month as we celebrate the contributions of our Caribbean Americans in Michigan's 12th Congressional District and across our nation. I know the Caribbean American Heritage Month was first recognized in 2005, and this was a combination of tireless efforts of organizers that highlight the amazing contributions of our Caribbean Americans. I want to also uplift in our backyard, the Caribbean Community Service Center, an organization based right in our district that is proudly uplifting the history and continuing to celebrate that culture and our neighbors in southeastern Michigan beyond this month. So please join me in recognizing Caribbean American Heritage Month and the contributions of our Caribbean Americans across our nation and in the 12th Congressional District. I yield.
He yields back. Now, the chair recognizes the gentleman from California, Mr. Peters, for 5 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to commemorate the loss of one of San Diego's most accomplished native sons and one of our most devoted citizens. On May 27th, Bill Walton passed away from colon cancer at just 71 years of age. Most people know Bill Walton as a successful basketball player, and that he certainly was. After winning titles at Helix High, he enrolled at UCLA, where he was a 3-time College Player of the Year, and he led the Bruins to 2 national championships in 3 years. In the NBA, despite a series of injuries, he won titles with the Portland Trail Blazers and the Boston Celtics, and he had an all-around game. His college coach, the great John Wooden, said, "Walton is the type of player who wouldn't have to score at all, yet he will dominate the game." Magic Johnson called Bill one of the smartest basketball players to ever live. And most count Bill as one of the two greatest college players ever, along with Lou Alcindor, later known as Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Bill was inducted to the National Basketball Hall of Fame in 1993, included in ESPN's ranking of the 50 greatest basketball players of all time. Bill retired from basketball almost 40 years ago, so his most famous accomplishments, those on the basketball court, have been history for a long time now. But his generosity, his gratitude, his determination, which set an example for me and so many, were present to the very end. We will miss those qualities very much at home. I understand when he was young, Bill may have been a bit cranky. Well, I never knew that, Bill Walton. By the time I met him, he wanted to make everyone happy. He wanted to volunteer, he wanted to help, he wanted to boost San Diego. Bill was a champion for the poor and for addressing homelessness through his work with the Lucky Duck Foundation, Champions for Health, Father Joe's Villages, Feeding San Diego. He supported the Brad Fowler Memorial Scholarship, which used sports to help teens overcome substance abuse. And he helped the Challenged Athletes Foundation equip disabled people to participate in sports. He helped San Diego State become a national basketball power. He cared deeply about the environment and joined the activists and organizations working to protect San Diego's natural resources. And he never just raised money, although he was willing to do that. He was there personally to thank, to encourage, to congratulate, always with a big smile, and never intending to be the center of attention, but inevitably always the center of attention. Bill also faced hard times. The injuries he'd suffered in sports led to such intolerable pain that Bill actually considered ending his own life. Fortunately, medical innovations in spine surgery helped him have close to a normal life, though he often brought his own tall chair with him so that he could have a more comfortable spot for his 7-foot frame to sit. Given the physical pain he suffered, I guess it's a little ironic that when you encountered Bill, what you noticed was his joy. You could feel that joy when he did a basketball broadcast, or when he talked about the Grateful Dead, or when he told basketball stories about Coach Wooden or about Larry Bird. And thankfully, he found joy in riding his bicycle. When I rode the Beta bike with him once, he told me that even though that was really important to him, and that even though this amazingly accomplished world-class competitor was notoriously slower on a bike than his friends, he would regularly proclaim himself the luckiest man in the world. Just being healthy enough to ride was the win. To Bill's wife, Lori, to his sons, Adam, Nate, Luke, and Chris, and his grandchildren, Olivia, Avery, Rose, and Chris, we extend our condolences. Bill Walton was a great San Diegan and a great American, and while we will miss him so much, he will live on through the thousands he served as a philanthropist, as a citizen, and as an example. I yield back.
Yields back. Chair now recognizes the gentleman from California, Mr. Costa, for 5 minutes.
Ask unanimous consent to address the House for 5 minutes and to advise and amend my remarks.
Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to celebrate Dia de Portugal. It's a national Portuguese holiday celebrating the anniversary of Portugal as a nation. It's the equivalent of their 4th of July. The story of the Portuguese Americans, I think, is also part of the American story. Why? Because the American story is one of immigrants past and immigrants present. I think it's the secret sauce of America. Every generation of immigrants coming to this country for over 200 years, adding value to our country. My district in California is home to generations of the Portuguese diaspora, the majority of them coming from the Azores Islands off the coast of Portugal, actually out in the middle of the Atlantic. As the co-chair of the Portuguese Caucus and a proud descendant of Portuguese immigrants, the traditions and values that my family took from the Azores have always been a part of who I am. This year, it is particularly meaningful to celebrate Dia de Portugal because it's the 50th anniversary of what they call the Carnation Revolution. That is the revolution that occurred in Portugal in the mid-70s when they transitioned from a dictatorship to a full-fledged democracy. Now a contributing member of the European Union. Portugal is one of America's longest and strongest allies. It was one of the first to recognize the United States as an independent nation after the Revolutionary War, and it is also original member of NATO. Join me in celebrating this special occasion and the strong bond between Portugal and the United States and the Portuguese people and people from our country. So, Feliz Dia de Portugal. Mr. Speaker, millions of families continue to struggle to put dinner on their table every night. And that's why I want to speak about the America Safety Net, known as SNAP, which is providing food for people who are insecure, 41 million Americans. Fresno and Tulare counties that I represent are among the top agricultural producing counties in the country. And it's a real dichotomy because we produce so much of plenty, over 300 commodities, 20% of America's milk production, almost half of the fruits and vegetables, 75% of the almonds in the world, and 50% of the pistachios. The list goes on and on. But in my district, I have a significant amount of food insecurity. 42 million Americans are food insecure. Our 12.5% of our nation's populations rely throughout the year on SNAP, this food supplement. In my district, out of 52 congressional districts in California, 28% rely on this SNAP. They are food insecure, whether they be young or old, or people with disabilities, or working people, a lot of them seasonal workers in our fields that live on $20,000 a year or maybe a little bit more, but have a family of 4 or 5 that they have to feed every night. So when we think about the Farm Bill and the reauthorization, it is not only the safety net to American farmers, ranchers, dairymen, and women, but it's also the safety net to 42 million Americans who are food insecure. So what we need to understand is that 4 out of 5 SNAP households include a child, an elderly individual, or a person with a disability. I know because my district ranks among the highest in California and the 6th highest in the nation. So SNAP is more than a lifeline. Why? Because it also benefits local economies and cuts hunger by 30%. Every dollar spent on SNAP generates economic activity and support for our farmers and small businesses, and obviously puts food in those families' dinner table. Nothing is more challenging than to educate a child. And for many of our children, the food, the breakfast and lunch program in our schools is the best meal they get during the day. So I don't look at it as a burden on taxpayers. I look at it as an investment in our nation's health and well-being. So as we debate the importance of reauthorizing the Farm Bill, let's address the income inequality that makes people food insecure. And let's sit together to try to find a bipartisan agreement to reauthorize the Farm Bill. I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman's time has expired. The chair now recognizes the gentlewoman from Washington, Ms. Gluesenkamp-Perez, for 5 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 5 minutes.
Without objection.
Today I rise to recognize the Ilwaco Fire Department, which was recently recognized as the Firehouse of the Year by the Washington State Firefighters Association. First responders and firefighters are on the front lines of keeping our community safe, and many of them are doing this as volunteers because they're committed to serving their community. At the Ilwaco Fire Department, the ambulance component is entirely run by and operated by their volunteers. Whether it's a wildfire or a house flood, our first responders are constantly prepared for the emergencies throughout our community. In this last year, the Ilwaco Fire Department was responsible for transporting more than 200 patients and traveling over 23,000 miles. The crucial role they play can't be done without proper funding, which is why I will always fight to bring back the federal dollars they deserve. I'm honored to have such a hardworking and outstanding fire department in my district. Thank you to all of the brave members of the Ilwaco Fire Department, and a special thanks to Sparky the fire dog for keeping everyone's spirits high. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to recognize Andrew Okerlund, a young mountain climber in my district. Last summer, Andrew became the 91st person to summit the 100 highest peaks in Washington state, which he accomplished in just 85 days. This list of summits is known as the Bulger List or the Bulger 100. Okerlund turned 21 this past March, making him the youngest person ever to complete the Bulger List. He started his climbing journey just 2 years prior when he became inspired by the stories of other young people who had competed in the 100 summits. Andrew's meticulous planning and grit was evident throughout his trek, from precise meal planning to his high standards for climbing partners. Each decision made in the 85 days was deliberate. Andrew Okerlund's accomplishment is a testimony to his dedication and strength, and I applaud him for such an impressive feat. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to recognize Angelina Rodriguez Caldwell, a freshman at Kelso High School. Angelina was just named Southwest Washington STEM Rising Star in recognition of her work as an active member in her school's medical club known as Club Med. Her time in Club Med has allowed her to participate as well as lead a variety of events and conferences. This upcoming school year, Angelina will serve as the Club Med president, allowing her educational opportunities to continue to grow in the medical field. Her teachers have shared that she excels in communication, work ethic, and spirit, rising to the challenges above her grade level. Caldwell has made her teachers and community extremely proud, and I have no doubt that this is just the beginning. Her success with Club Med shows how much students can accomplish when they are given the tools to work on issues they're interested in. Congratulations, Angelina. I can't wait to see what you accomplish next. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to recognize a recent harmful spike in paralytic shellfish poisoning known as PSP that has partially shut down shellfish fishing in Willapa Bay. The PSP biotoxin is caused by a harmful microorganism that can spread in coastal waters. This spike was the first to cause commercial closures in Willapa Bay since 1997. The shellfish industry plays a critical role in Southwest Washington economy and ecosystem. However, due to this outbreak, most commercial shellfish farming was halted for over 10 days, costing growers, their families, and employees financial hardship and challenges. Testing requirements has put constraints on growers, and shutting down harvesting operations has threatened the jobs of hundreds of Southwest Washingtonians. Imagine what 10 days of lost pay would do to your ability to pay rent or make a payment on your car. I stand by the shellfish farmers during this difficult time. Local farmers are a staple in Southwest Washington, and it is essential that they get the support they need to be able to continue their operations. My staff and I are closely monitoring the situation as more information is discovered. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to recognize Mayor Rob Gordon of Bucota, who recently passed away after battling stomach cancer. Mayor Gordon was born in Centralia and remained a lifelong resident of Southwest Washington. Before and during his tenure as mayor, Gordon was the assistant chief of the Bucota Fire Department and has been serving as a firefighter since the age of 16. In addition to serving the public, Mayor Gordon also worked for his family's company that he co-owned with his brother, where he drove dump and log trucks. Outside of work, he enjoyed raising cattle on his family farm, collecting old International tractors, and teaching these skills and values to his children and son Jacob and Ann. Mayor Gordon was the epitome of a servant leader, and the impact he had on our community cannot be understated. He was old school, he was tough, he was fair-minded, at times reserved, but he always gave people the chance to be the best version of themselves. This loss will be felt by many, and his life of service and dedication to Bucota will echo forever. My thoughts are with his family, Miriam, Jacob, and Anna, and loved ones grieving this devastating loss. Mr. Speaker, thank you, and I yield back.
Gentlewoman yields. The chair now recognizes the gentlewoman from California, Ms. Kamlager Dove, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to honor the life of Reverend James Lawson, a pioneering civil rights activist whose enduring commitment to unity and nonviolence shaped our nation, and he was a beloved constituent of the 37th Congressional District. As a young missionary, Reverend Lawson traveled to India, where he studied under Mahatma Gandhi. It was during this trip that he developed his guiding philosophy of civil disobedience, one that would inspire a generation of activists. In the 60s and 70s, Reverend Lawson led nonviolent workshops with the Southern Christian Leadership Conference as the organization worked to desegregate the South. In 1974, he moved to Los Angeles and was named senior pastor of Holman United Methodist Church, also in my district, a largely black congregation of 2,700. He preached for 25 years, leaving an enormous impact on the South LA community. Reverend Lawson's visionary leadership changed the course of American history. At a time when tensions are escalating at home and abroad, his guidance will be deeply missed. He was a mentor to so many and a blessing to so many more. Please join me in honoring his legacy and the values that he championed during his lifetime. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to honor the legacies of two LA basketball legends, Jerry West and Bill Walton, who both changed the game in their own rights. Jerry West was a man of many names: the Logo, Mr. Clutch, Mr. Outside, and Zeke from Cabin Creek. He was also a man of many titles: player, coach, scout, and general manager, all for my Los Angeles Lakers. After a stellar college career at his home state, West Virginia University, West was drafted second overall to the Lakers, beginning a career that would span over 40 years. As a player, West dominated the backcourt, garnering all-star honors in each of his 14 playing seasons and bringing home a championship in 1972. Upon his retirement, he came back to the Lakers as a head coach, then scout, and finally as an executive where he truly thrived. West constructed the Lakers' 1980s Showtime dynasty, which helped bring the NBA into the mainstream and won 5 championships. Towards the end of his tenure as general manager, he orchestrated the trade for Kobe and signed Shaq, leading to a championship in his final season with the Lakers and setting them up to complete a three-peat with 2 more in the following 2 seasons. While West later pursued other opportunities in the NBA, he will forever be a Los Angeles legend for his fierce loyalty and contributions to the team and our city. A California native, Bill Walton was recruited to UCLA by the illustrious John Wooden, where he went on to lead the Bruins to 2 consecutive 30-0 seasons and 2 NCAA championships, earning the honor of Naismith College Player of the Year 3 times. So while I'm a Trojan for life, I gotta respect that. Walton then went on to have an equally impressive career in the NBA, leading the Portland Trailblazers to their first title in 1977 and following up that season by taking home the NBA MVP. I won't go into further detail, but he did later win another title with a certain team from Massachusetts in 1986. Walton's entire career is a story of perseverance. Throughout his basketball career, he battled injuries to support his teams the best he could, and following his playing career, Walton overcame a stutter to become a celebrated broadcaster. After living all across the U.S., he never let the California free spirit in him wane. He was a committed anti-war advocate, devoted deadhead, and he fought to preserve the Pac-12 until the end. Please join me in honoring the legacies of these 2 L.A. legends. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield back.
The gentlewoman yields. The chair recognizes the gentlewoman from Alabama, Ms. Sewell, for 5 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to recognize Major League Baseball's tribute to the Negro Leagues, which will take place at the historic Rick Wood Fields in Birmingham, Alabama, beginning Tuesday, June 18th, 2024, and culminating with an MLB game, the Giants versus the Cardinals, on Thursday, June 20th. Built in 1910, Birmingham's historic Rick Wood Field is the oldest professional baseball field in the United States. For 36 years, it served as the official home to the Birmingham Black Barons of the Negro Leagues. And to this day, it continues to stand as a living monument of baseball history. For decades, the Black Barons were a beacon of excellence in Birmingham's community. Between 1943 and 1948, they racked up a win percentage of more than 60% and captured 3 Negro League pennants. At the height of Jim Crow segregation, the success of the Black Barons at Rickwood Field galvanized and united Birmingham's black community. The stands were always overflowing with fans eager to cheer on their favorite team. Over the years, Rickwood Field has hosted a number of baseball giants, including Willie Mays from Fairfield, Alabama, Satchel Paige, Jackie Robinson, Hank Aaron, Josh Gibson, and of course, Birmingham's own Black Baron, Reverend William Greason, who at the age of 99 continues to give back to his Birmingham community as pastor of Bethel Baptist Church, Bernie Points. With the help of the Major League Baseball, Rickwood Field has undergone major renovations. Beginning on Tuesday, June 18th, it will host a series of events to pay tribute to the Negro Leagues and to recognize the contributions of African Americans to baseball history. On June 18th, Rickwood Field will host a minor league contest between the Birmingham Barons and the Montgomery Biscuits. On Wednesday, June 19th, to commemorate Juneteenth, I will honor the Negro Leagues by hosting a tribute to William Greason, our 99-year-old constituent who played for the Birmingham Black Barons from 1948 to 1951 at 1 p.m. at the Bethel Baptist Church, Bernie Point. Later that day, the Birmingham community will join together with MLB for a celebrity softball game in celebration of Juneteenth. The events will culminate with a special regular season game between the St. Louis Cardinals and the San Francisco Giants on Thursday, June 20th. It will be the first MLB game played at a Negro League stadium in America's history. As we gather to celebrate Juneteenth, I can think of no more befitting time to honor the Negro Leagues. I look forward to welcoming the Major League Baseball and my colleagues of the Congressional Black Caucus to Birmingham, Alabama, for a time of reflection and celebration. I ask my colleagues to join me in recognizing Major League Baseball for their tribute to the Negro Leagues at Rickwood Field. Thank you, and let's play ball.
The gentlewoman yields. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from California, Mr. McClintock, for 5 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, Citizens Against Government Waste has released its 2024 Pig Book, documenting the fiscal rot that is taking place with congressional earmarks. CAGW documents 8,222 congressional earmarks in last year's appropriations bills. That's up more than 11% in a single year, costing taxpayers $22.7 billion, the fifth highest amount of earmark spending since CAGW began tracking it in 1991. I want to thank Tom Schatz and his staff for continuing to shine the light on one of Congress's most tawdry and wasteful practices, in which individual congressmen bypass merit-driven competition and instead personally direct spending to pet projects in their own districts or to favored supporters. CAGW notes that, quote, earmarks continue to provide the most benefit to the most powerful legislators. In fiscal year 2024, the 90 members of the House and Senate Appropriations Committees, making up only 17% of the Congress, were responsible for 42% of the earmarks and 35% of the money. One House Appropriations member grabbed 13 earmarks costing taxpayers $250 million. Now, although all spending bills start in the House, and the voters elected a Republican House for that reason, Democrats received 3/4 of the earmarks, 8,571 to the Republicans, 2,931. But they're all bad. Since Magna Carta, it's been a settled principle of good governance that the power to spend money should be separate from the power to appropriate it. That's at the heart of our constitutional separation of powers. The president spends money but cannot appropriate it, and Congress appropriates money but cannot spend it. Earmarks combine these two powers, and the inevitable result is waste, log rolling, pork barrel spending, and ultimately corruption. It's no coincidence that so many of the congressional scandals involving political corruption or laughably absurd projects are the result of earmarks. Worthy projects in open competitive bidding don't need earmarks. They rise or fall on their own merits. And if there is such a thing as a good earmark, the price to be paid is all of the bad ones, and that's a high price indeed. Members can and should advocate for their districts and make the case for projects they deem worthy of the money that Congress has appropriated. The problem with earmarks is blurring these two roles and having individual members both advocate and decide. Now, many say they don't trust this president and his deputies to administer these funds appropriately and even-handedly, and I share that sentiment. But if you don't trust the president to administer the funds that we appropriate, then don't give him the money. We hear that earmarks simply assure that local governments get a fair break. No, what they actually do is turn the federal budget into a grab bag for local pork spending by the most powerful members of Congress. And they undermine the central tenet of federalism, that local projects should be financed by local communities and federal spending reserved for the nation's general welfare. When a local government proposes an earmark, what's it saying? It's saying the project is so low on its priority list that they don't dare spend their own taxpayers' money, but they're perfectly happy to have taxpayers in other communities foot the bill. And the result is a long list of dubious projects that rob St. Petersburg to pay St. Paul for projects that St. Petersburg doesn't benefit from and that St. Paul doesn't deem worthy enough to spend its own money on. Finally, it said that earmarks can grease legislation by buying off the votes of individual members. Add a few local projects for that member, and suddenly a bill he'd never vote for on its merits becomes a local imperative overriding his sound judgment. Okay, but explain to me exactly how that's a good thing. Paying interest on the national debt now exceeds our entire defense spending for the first time in our history. And history warns us that countries that bankrupt themselves aren't around very long. If we are going to avoid the terrible fate of so many nations before ours, we have to end congressional profligacy, and earmarks are the most glaring example of that waste. So thanks to Citizens Against Government Waste for continuing to expose the excesses and inequities of earmarks and to hold accountable those politicians from both parties who are responsible for it. Yield back.
The chair now recognizes the gentlewoman from Illinois, Ms. Ramirez, for 5 minutes. Thank you. Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, in recognition of Pride Month, I rise today to honor Lisa Isadora Cruz, a passionate and committed advocate for the trans community in my district and beyond. Born in Puerto Rico, Lisa, like many of our trans neighbors, faced systemic and social challenges that motivated her to create and strengthen networks of community care, of solidarity, and support. She eventually moved to Chicago, where she has committed herself to support marginalized communities, especially the LGBTQ+ community of color, through her work in health services, mental health care, and housing. In addition to the gratitude of her community, Lisa's advocacy has earned numerous awards, including the Transgender Leadership Award, the Rosa Parks Equality Award, and inclusion in Chicago's LGBT Hall of Fame. On behalf of Illinois' 3rd Congressional District, I am proud to commend Lisa Isadora Cruz for courageously inspiring us to live our truth and our courage to support and celebrate communities. Gracias, Lisa. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to honor Erica L. Sanchez, a writer rooted in the Illinois Three whose work has profoundly impacted literature and culture in our district and beyond. The daughter of Mexican immigrants, Erica's works of poetry, of fiction, and nonfiction have moved so many eager readers. Her young adult novel, I Am Not Your Perfect Mexican Daughter, shares Julia's story, a story shared by many children of immigrants as she navigates family expectations, mental health, struggles, and cultural stereotypes. Her beautiful story will now find a new life as a film directed by America Ferrera and screenwritten by Linda Yvette Chavez. This Immigrant Heritage Month, I am grateful for storytellers like Erica, who invite us into deeper understanding of our immigrant experiences and who encourage young people throughout art and literature. On behalf of Illinois' 3rd Congressional District, I commend Erica Sanchez for her skill, for her creativity, and her commitment to tell our stories. Thank you, Erica. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to honor the one and only Elise Edwards, a leader bringing diverse communities together in our shared struggle for justice and freedom. From West Humboldt Park, Elise is the founder and executive director of Drown Out Ministries, a nonprofit providing hope and transitional housing for women returning community from prison. She's also a member of the Westside Rising Chicagoland United in Prayer and Westside Community Leadership Fellows, and she's a council member for the 11th Police District, where she works to redefine community safety and hold the Chicago Police Department accountable to the people. As we observe Juneteenth, I appreciate Elise's leadership in the 1865 Fest Coalition, bringing critical awareness to the day's significance and the struggle for Black liberation. On behalf of Illinois' 3rd Congressional District, I commend Elise Edwards for her dedication to community and her relentless fight for our collective leadership. Congratulations, Elise. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. The chair recognizes the gentleman from New York, Mr. Molinaro.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to recognize the Binghamton Black Bears on winning this year's Commissioner's Cup Championship. Not only is this the team's first title in franchise history, but it is also the first time a professional team has brought back a championship to Binghamton since 2011. Binghamton, New York is a hockey town, and we are grateful to the Black Bears for choosing our city to plant their roots in 2021. We're even more proud to call ourselves champions. Now, earlier this year, I had the opportunity to attend a game that ended in a thrilling overtime victory, and I have to say that my wife, Corinne, kids Abigail, Elias, and Theo still haven't stopped talking about that game. This team is gritty like the city of Binghamton. It is resilient and reflective of our city, and it was clear to me then and even more apparent watching their incredible playoff run. And Mr. Speaker, I ask that my colleagues in the House join me in congratulating the Black Bears and its ownership group led by Andreas Johansson, head coach Brant Sherwood, and the entire staff on the ice and in the back office. And of course, we extend our appreciation and congratulations to the Binghamton Black Bears players led by Captain Tyson Kirkby. Congratulations to our Binghamton Black Bears, and congratulations to the city of Binghamton. With that, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The chair recognizes the gentlewoman from New Jersey, Ms. Sherrill, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to share my deep disappointment in what my colleagues on the far right have done with this year's National Defense Authorization Act. Instead of building on the bipartisan work we achieved in the Armed Services Committee, they've loaded up the bill with MAGA culture war amendments and refused to allow a vote on amendments that would improve the quality of life for service members, their families, and the American people. For centuries, a cornerstone of the American people's trust in our military has been reinforced by laws like the Posse Comitatus Act, which provides a guarantee that our armed forces are there to protect them, not police them. But there are dangerous gaps in the laws that govern National Guard deployment. Every year since the former president first abused these laws to suppress protests in Washington, D.C., I've introduced an amendment to make sure that any future president cannot skirt these important laws. If elected to another term, Donald Trump has promised to be a dictator on day one and has outlined his intent to weaponize the military and law enforcement to go after his political opponents. So I can't say I'm surprised that this year the House is refusing to even debate this amendment. I'm also deeply concerned by the turn this bill took when it comes to our servicewomen. When I was first commissioned 30 years ago at the Naval Academy, there were many who argued against women serving in leadership positions. People circulated James Webb's op-ed titled, "Women Can't Fight." They said women couldn't withstand the G-force of F-15s like men could. In fact, the chief of naval operations at the time said women wouldn't be serving on submarines in his lifetime and received a standing ovation from the Brigade of Midshipmen. But by the time I graduated, things were changing. My class of 1994 was the first eligible to serve in most combat roles. So I got my wings. I became a helicopter pilot and a helicopter commander, and I flew missions across the globe. It's that opportunity that allowed me to eventually become a member of Congress. The fact that I was given the opportunity to lead, to serve, and to climb the ranks in pursuit of a shared mission. It's because of that progress that we finally have the first woman chief of naval operations and member of the Joint Chiefs. We have the first female commander of an aircraft carrier, my classmate, and the first woman superintendent of the Naval Academy. But today I see my Republican colleagues trying to take us backwards, offering amendments to strip women's ability to serve in combat roles, to make our military less inclusive for Black, brown, and LGBTQ service members, and to repeal the Pentagon's policy that allows servicewomen to be reimbursed for travel to get an abortion. Frankly, it's like we're living in the upside down. These policies will not make our military stronger. It'll make it harder to recruit and retain talented Americans who simply want to serve our country, just like I did. So today, after the fall of Roe, we are sending servicewomen and their families to serve in states with draconian abortion laws. States like Texas, which has the 49th worst reproductive care in the nation. And these are orders. They don't have a choice where they want to serve. So if we're going to tell them to serve in Texas or Florida, we should, at a bare minimum, ensure that they have the baseline reproductive care and rights that they deserve. We send servicewomen overseas to risk their lives for their country. We should not be sending them to Texas or Florida or Idaho to risk their lives giving birth. That's why I offer an amendment to codify the DoD's travel policy, an amendment to ensure that military service providers know the care they are legally obligated to provide servicewomen and their families, an amendment to ensure that servicewomen know the care they are entitled to regardless of where they're stationed, an amendment to ensure that the military can provide emergency care to servicewomen, including medically necessary abortions. And it's why I offered an amendment to lift restrictions on the DoD so military facilities have the freedom to perform abortions. But guess what? All of these amendments were ruled out of order by my far-right MAGA colleagues on the Rules Committee. In the greatest deliberative body in the world, my Republican colleagues wouldn't even bring these up for a debate or a vote. They'd rather tuck their plans away in Trump's Project 2025 or a speech to the Susan B. Anthony's list rather than debate them on the merits or go on the record with their votes. Mr. Speaker, I know as a veteran that we must do better for service members and military families. But today's bill has once again been hijacked by the far right, not to improve our military or national security, but to drive an agenda that makes America look small, attacks women, and ultimately will be detrimental to the greatest fighting force in the world. Thank you, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentlewoman yields. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Klein, for 5 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to congratulate Michael McKee on being the recipient of the 2024 John Van Hengel Fellowship Award. Feeding America presents this award to an executive of a partner food bank for excellence in leadership, local impact, national influence, and entrepreneurial spirit in the area of hunger relief. For over a decade, Michael has served as the CEO of the Blue Ridge Area Food Bank, which distributes food to one of the largest regions in Virginia. He's overseen the food bank's tremendous growth, including expanded warehouse capacity, thousands of people served each month, and millions of pounds of food distributed each year. During COVID, Michael ensured that vulnerable populations such as children, seniors, and immigrants continue to have access to nutritious food. More recently, his innovative partnerships include collaborating with Centera RMH to launch a new online directory of food assistance resources, and with the National Association of Letter Carriers in a successful Stamp Out Hunger campaign. Mr. Speaker, I once again want to congratulate Michael for the national recognition of his efforts and tireless advocacy to end hunger in our part of Virginia. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to congratulate Debbie Martin of Frederick County Middle School for being named the Discovery Education Educator of the Year. This distinguished award recognizes educators who demonstrate unwavering commitment to student achievement, innovative teaching practices, and unique contributions to learning. Debbie Martin exemplifies all these qualities and more. Discovery Education offers digital classroom resources, including podcasts, science experiments, videos, and articles, which Debbie Martin has utilized in her own classroom to shape the next generation of Virginians. After 28 years of teaching in Frederick County, including 21 years at Frederick County Middle School, Debbie announced her retirement at the end of the school year. Mr. Speaker, I extend my heartfelt congratulations to Debbie Martin for her well-deserved recognition and thank her for her years of devotion to the students of Frederick County. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to congratulate the George Washington Hotel in Winchester, Virginia, as it celebrates its remarkable 100th anniversary. Since its opening in 1924, the GW has stood as a beacon of hospitality and splendor. Located at the intersection of East Piccadilly and North Cameron Streets, it was once the tallest building in Winchester. For half a century, the GW flourished as a premier luxury destination. By 1978, it had transformed into an assisted living facility before closing its doors in 1993. But in 2003, the George Washington Hotel was purchased and underwent a meticulous restoration. By 2008, the hotel once again opened its doors, rejuvenating its historic grandeur. Today, we honor the George Washington Hotel's first century, celebrating its enduring legacy of resilience and charm. Congratulations to the GW on reaching this significant milestone. Here's to another 100 years of exceptional hospitality and profound success. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to recognize the extraordinary achievement of the Clark County 4-H poultry judging junior team. For the third consecutive year, these outstanding young Virginians won first place at the state level. Among this talented group of 4th to 8th graders were Samuel Sinclair, Josiah Sinclair, Molly Solich, Brendan Whalen, and Finn Whalen. The team won the 2024 State 4-H FFA Poultry Evaluation Contest in Harrisonburg, which consisted of evaluating eggs, patties, live birds, and ready-to-cook birds. Under the guidance of their coach, Brian Cather of Clark County, these students have been practicing since February, preparing rigorously for the statewide competition. Their hard work and commitment are truly commendable. Please join me in congratulating these remarkable 4-H members and their coach for this extraordinary accomplishment. Mr. Speaker, last week the Biden administration rolled out another ineffective executive order supposedly aimed at securing our border. This executive order claimed that the U.S.-Mexico border was shut down once illegal crossings hit 2,500 per day. That would result in nearly 1 million additional illegals crossing over the border over the next year. The American people deserve more than an election year stunt that won't actually secure our borders. For the past 3.5 years, Biden has failed his responsibility to the American people to secure our borders and safeguard our national security. Instead, Biden and his administration have taken over 60 executive actions to open our borders and completely dismantle one of the most secure borders our country has ever had. The chaos unleashed by Biden's policies has turned every community into a border community, whether in the form of rising crime, the fentanyl crisis, or massive strains on our hospitals, schools, and other community services. Mr. Speaker, it's far past time that we hold the Biden administration accountable for its complete dereliction of duty to secure our borders. The executive order is nothing but a desperate ploy to boost Biden's poll numbers ahead of November. The American people deserve an administration that will put their safety and concern first by implementing actual solutions to this border crisis, not political theatrics. Mr. Speaker, I yield back.
The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Vesey, for 2 minutes. I'm sorry.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday, 2 basketball legends were lost. One of those basketball legends was from Fort Worth, Texas, better known as the mayor of Stop Six, and that was Coach Robert Hughes. Coach Robert Hughes was the most winningest boys high school basketball coach in the country. There are only 4 coaches with over 1,000 wins, and Coach Hughes is one of those with 1,333 wins, making him the winningest coach of all time for boys. He grew up in Oklahoma, played basketball at Texas Southern, and was drafted by the Boston Celtics, and an injury landed him in the Fort Worth Independent School District, where he coached during the times of segregation for I.M. Terrell. After segregation ended, Coach Hughes moved to Dunbar High School, where he put on quite a show. There were no accidents with Coach Hughes. All of his kids followed the rules. They were well disciplined. They followed through pinpoint execution. And Coach Hughes didn't play any games in his coaching of these young men. He would have his coat unbuttoned, and if someone came down and took a shot that he knew wasn't right, Coach Hughes would put his hands on his hips, look down at the bench and point, and have the other person come in. And it was just amazing that decade after decade, Coach Hughes produced so many outstanding players, so many state championships, and was a role model for so many of these young men, a father figure for many of these young men. You should see the comments on Facebook about Coach Hughes. Coach Hughes and now Coach Rambo that you see there to his right, they're both gone now, but the memories of what he's done for the city of Fort Worth, what he's done for basketball in Texas and the school known for Friday Night Lights, this man literally was the show, and we will miss Coach Hughes. Also, Madam Speaker, I rise today to celebrate Fort Worth's own Lake Como community, where I'm from.
With apologies, the gentleman's time has expired. The chair recognizes the gentlewoman from South Carolina, Ms. Mace, for 5 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to honor the legacy of one of my constituents, Joe Coates, who passed away late last month after a hard-fought battle with cancer. He was a true public servant. As the director of the Charleston County Emergency Management Department, Joe dedicated his life to ensuring the safety and well-being of our community. Joe's commitment to public service goes far beyond that. For nearly 2 decades, he served Charleston County in various roles, including as a coordinator for the Sheriff's Rural Search and Rescue Team and as a secretary for the Disaster Recovery Network following the devastating floods of 2015. His leadership as the planning section chief under the Low Country Incident Management Team was instrumental in guiding our community through times of crisis. On May 16, 2024, during a special meeting of County Council, attended by Joe and his family, friends, and colleagues, members of Council voted unanimously to rename the Emergency Operations Center the Joe Coates Emergency Operations Center. My team and I extend our deepest condolences to Coates' family, friends, and colleagues. May we all strive to embody the selflessness, compassion, and leadership that Joe exemplified throughout his life. His legacy and his impact on Charleston County will be remembered forever. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to celebrate the unveiling of the Harriet Tubman Monument in Beaufort County and to highlight Beaufort's rich history in the fight for freedom and equality. This monument stands as a powerful tribute to a remarkable woman whose courage and dedication to liberty continue to inspire all of us today. Harriet Tubman's legacy is deeply woven into the fabric of our nation's history and even in Beaufort County. She led countless enslaved individuals to freedom through the Underground Railroad, embodying the very essence of bravery and resilience. Beaufort County is steeped in history, from the establishment of the Penn Center, one of the first schools for freed slaves, to its strategic importance during the Union occupation. This area became a sanctuary for those seeking freedom and education, and it continues to be a symbol of resilience and progress. The monument in Beaufort County not only honors Harriet Tubman's extraordinary achievements, but also serves as a reminder of their enduring fight for justice and freedom. I commend the efforts of the local community, historians, artists, activists who have worked tirelessly to bring this project to fruition. Their dedication ensures that future generations will learn about Harriet Tubman's incredible contributions and profound impact she had on our country. And in fact, one night during the Civil War, Harriet Tubman rescued over 700 slaves in Beaufort County. And so she's had an extraordinary impact on South Carolina. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to congratulate the Dorchester County Dispatch Center on its remarkable strides to improving 911 response times amid our community's rapid growth, particularly this week when we had a tornado hit Dorchester County. This state-of-the-art facility is a testament to the dedication and hard work of our local officials and emergency services personnel who tirelessly strive to ensure the safety and well-being of all of our residents. I would like to extend a special recognition to Tristan Proctor, Director of Dorchester County Emergency Management, and Mario Formisano, Deputy Administrator for Public Safety for Dorchester County. Their leadership and vision has been instrumental in addressing the challenges faced with the old facility, which was not built to withstand significant tropical storm force winds or seismic activities and lacked adequate space. I commend the leadership of Dorchester County for their vision and their commitment to public safety. Mr. Speaker, I rise today with a heavy heart to honor the life and legacy of Johnny Wachter, who has sadly passed away. Johnny was a beloved actor known for his compelling performances on General Hospital, where he touched the lives of many with his talent and his dedication. Johnny's portrayal of Brando Corbin resonated deeply with fans and brought joy, drama, and depth to the show. His ability to convey complex emotions and connect with audiences was truly remarkable, making him a cherished figure in the world of daytime television. Beyond his on-screen presence, Johnny was known for his kindness and generosity off the set. He was a friend to many, always willing to lend a hand or a listening ear. His passing is a profound loss to all who knew him and to the countless fans who admired his work. Today, we remember Johnny Wachter. We are also reminded of the incredible talent that emerges from the Low Country in South Carolina. Johnny's success story is a testament to the creativity and dedication that thrive in our region. His journey from the Low Country to the national stage serves as an inspiration to many aspiring artists in our community. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield back.
The gentlewoman yields. Pursuant to Clause 12A of Rule 1, the chair declares the House in recess until noon today.